started my classes this time.
Ah, good.
I don't have to.
You won't have to borrow any from someone.
That clock is not changed yet. In case you glance at that one, it is.
No, I was looking at
In
mine.
case we really made time progress there.
Yes.
I wouldn't trust that one. I really
Back in the car.
wouldn't.
Oh, wait, here's one right here.
I think it's almost 4.
Couldn't find the number.
Oh, good. I want to call this meeting to order and welcome all of you to the Nacogdoches Historic Landmark Preservation Committee meeting of November the 4th, 2019. We have several things on the agenda today. The first thing we need to do is approval of the minutes of the meeting of August the 5th, 2019. I hope you've all had a chance to read them over. And were there any corrections that needed to be made?
No, but these are for September 11th.
For
so-
September the 11th.
So
What am
I'll
I
make a
looking
motion
at?
that we approve those,
Why am I reading this?
because that date
This
was on
is
the
the
other one.
meeting before. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm only 2 months behind. All right, do I hear a motion to approve the minutes of September the 11th, 2019?
Yeah, make a motion to do that.
And all in favor, please state aye, please.
Chairman, excuse me, Chairman, we need a second.
I need a second.
Second.
We missed 1 month, 1 month, and it just falls to pieces.
Second.
Thank you. Now, all in favor, state aye, please.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Now we need to consider the historic restoration grant reimbursement for property located at 312 and 314 East Main. This is HRG number 2019-004.
Yes, Chairman, HRG 2019-004 was a rather extensive project. It encompassed 2 buildings at 312 and 314 East Main, commonly referred to as House of Traditions and now called Gall's Cafe. I'm not going to read everything that they did. It's in your packet.
Right.
Simply to say they did a massive renovation. Parts of it were an excellent restoration. It's an example of where Hlpc heard the request and said, yes, staff, please act as our intermediary, and as things come along, make best judgments and bring anything back to us that you didn't feel comfortable with. That enabled them to get this project done because they weren't only doing the exterior in Gall's Cafe, they did a full interior. And as any of you have done work before, you know that takes quite some time. So staff is definitely excited that both those projects are done. The project was funded at 50% of the final project cost, not to exceed $18,727.50. The project's final cost was $29,616.20. Their original estimate was almost $37,500. So staff recommends approval to release grant funds in the amount of $14,808.10. That's 14808.10. Chairman?
All right. Do we have anything to say about this? I think it looks fantastic, but I'd like to, do we have any questions, any comments, any discussion?
I'll second that they, it looks great.
It does, it really does, yes.
Fantastic, Chris.
Okay, I have a second for the release of the funds. All in, well, really, we didn't make a motion.
No, I'm seconding your comment.
Oh, she was seconding my comment, thank you. Oh, seriously. Okay, all right. Do I hear a motion to release the funds in the amount of $14,808.10?
I make a motion, we do.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor state aye, please.
Aye.
And I love to see Nacogdoches fix up everything, not just downtown, but everything. All right, next on the agenda is the extension for HRG 2019-003. This is 1801 North Street, and
Yes, Chairman. Oh, I'm sorry.
no, please.
I apologize. Yes, this is, Russell Smith is the applicant on behalf of Heritage Company. It's the law firm right across the entrance from SFA on North Street. Mr. Smith and Heritage were approved to receive 50% of their final project cost. They have done approximately half of the work, so this is not a case where they waited till the end. Their contractor, I believe, went out of the country for a short time and weather delays, et cetera. So they have requested an 8-month extension, and if approved, their grant will be due on June 18th of 2020. And staff, as a tradition, does not make recommendations on extensions.
Okay. Do we need any discussion or comments on this?
I think we've had
I think so.
similar situations pop up before.
I think we've had several situations like this crop up. All right, do I hear a motion to approve the extension?
I'll make a motion that we approve HRG 2019-003, extended to June 18th, 2020.
Thank you. Do I hear a second? Second. Thank you very much. All in favor state aye, please.
Aye.
Thank you. All right. Now, we have a consent agenda, which includes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 COAs for property. Do we need to pull any of these out to discuss, comment, question, anything about A to I under the consent agenda number 5?
Okay.
So as a refresher, as you're considering that for the rest of the commission, you are able to pull out all of the items, one of the items, none of the items. It is completely up to you. Items A through G are ordinary maintenance, ones that you typically would not see presented, but because they are tied to a restoration grant, they require approval. Items H and I are not ordinary maintenance, but are items that you have historically approved. Taking something that is a non-historic material and replacing it with a historic material, such as the case with H, where it is taking a metal railing and the request is to take it back to a wood railing. In the case of I, it is covering, it's ordinary maintenance plus protecting a couple of stained glass windows with plate glass. So putting a plate glass on the outside, which still enables you to see the stained glass, but giving it a little extra protection.
Exactly. Since these are all maintenance, routine maintenance except for the last two, could I hear a motion to okay the consent agenda of A through I for the COAs of these properties? Do Do we need to discuss anything?
I'll make a motion that we move forward all of Agenda 5, A through I.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. All in favor state aye, please. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. They were very routine things, but like Brian said, when money is attached to them. Item 6, consider the COA for property located at 330 East Main, COA number 2019-018.
Yes, Chairman, now begins the fun part. We have detailed discussion on the next several items. The applicant for 330 East Main is requesting to replace 55 exterior windows to be kept with a similar style. And the wording is such because there are different styles within those 55 windows. Also requesting to replace an existing fire escape with a new metal fire escape stairway, and then replace the existing wooden rail balcony with a new metal railing. And then item that is ordinary maintenance is the last one on there, and that is replace the balcony decking with new roofing. So there's an existing roof on that deck, and they're requesting to place a new material on that deck, which is a TPO, which is something that you've approved in almost every new building downtown. So Chairman, staff recommends approval of these proposed changes and will work closely with the applicant specifically on the window replacement items throughout the project to ensure historical integrity remains intact should you approve these items. And this is tied to a historic restoration grant, which we'll see towards the end of your agenda.
Okay.
And there are your
Thanks.
photos of the front of the building.
Yeah, I think we're all familiar with this building. It's great.
Is there any
Yes.
more information on, I mean, we're just being told replace windows. I mean, is there any more detail on that?
Not at this time.
I had forgotten.
Replacing
had met the
windows
owner,
makes
so
me a
that's
bit
why I was-
nervous, so, you know, it can go afoul so easily.
It's pretty broad.
You started, I thought you were getting up, so I thought you were doing something.
Not at this time. I mean, we explained to the applicant and said that we would work closely with them as everything progressed, just to make sure and explain why it's so important for the windows to be kept.
So you guys will be our watchdog, right?
I
And
just
we don't have
want
anything
this
to
come
worry
back
about.
to us. And being said, you do not provide explicit instructions.
And that, if approved, that will be listed in their outcome letter. And so they are not able to proceed without getting approval from staff. And so instead of just saying you are approved to do the work you proposed, Hannah is very good at writing the letters such as, and I'm going to make this up on the fly, but you are approved to replace 55 windows per staff approval, you know, once material, design, et cetera, is presented.
Good.
And there's no get out of jail free card if they don't follow in staff approval.
Correct.
Okay,
Okay,
because we've
is-
had that happen.
Yes.
Yeah. And this is too big of a building for
Yes.
that to happen.
And I know both Hannah and I have discussed this with, not the owner, I discussed it with one of their staff and explained the importance of the division of light, you know, whether it's a 1/1 or 4/1, et cetera.
Right.
And then also the material. I also spoke with one of the contractors that they had go on site, local contracting company, and explained to him. And that individual also did the Durst Taylor restoration, so he understood what I was relaying when it came to the type of windows. That's the only reason Hannah and I felt comfortable moving forward without a snapshot of what they were wanting to put in.
Fire
Okay.
escape doesn't bother me. you
No,
know,
it
I mean,
doesn't
that-
me either.
But
The window concern was my only concern, same with yours. Okay, as long as you guys are on the job, we're trusting you. Don't pull that face. Okay. Do I hear a motion To okay this application, considering that, how should we put it? I can't think of how to word it. Perky, can you put it into words?
That all the assurances and that they will be held responsible to following staff guidance. And staff guidance will follow what we've been concerned about.
That sounds good, thank you. And I second that. All in favor, state aye, please.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay? Okay. Thank you. Yeah, that sort of made me nervous, but we have faith. All right. Now we will consider the COA for property located at 322 East Main, COA number 2019-021.
Yes, Chairman, this is similar to your previous one for 322 East Main. They're requesting to replace 10 exterior windows on the rear of the property, the back of the property, which is kind of the alley side, even though it's Pillar Street, and replace and paint molding and trim. The photos that are in your packet are taken from the inside because it's kind of hard when you're on the bottom floor, street level, taking pictures of a second or a third floor window. It's kind of difficult to capture those. Just wanted to explain why they looked the way they did. And then also replace and paint some molding and trim. Staff also recommends approval of this item or these items. Chairman?
Thank you. And I think that very much the same sentiment goes along with this, that appropriateness will be followed as far as the windows are concerned. Even though they're on the back side of the building, there is a street there, and so it's quite visible. Are there any questions or
I'm trying to
discussion?
find the pictures. We have
I
one
know,
front
I know,
side
this is
pictures,
quite a
no back
packet.
side pictures.
They're not in the packet.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, is there a picture in there?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's why I'm saying those are from the inside, the interior.
Here it is, Perky.
Ah, you found it.
Toward the back.
49. All right.
And the windows have sagged. You can see the one there, it's the top, it's separated. And so that's what they're wanting to do, is rebuild those windows so that you can seal them from the elements.
Well,
All
this-
right, so it does say replace windows, but is there a possibility they might be repaired, or, will? Oh, well, it's hard to tell from this.
Their request is to replace.
Okay,
You know, if it's a repair, then that's something that we wouldn't
right,
be reviewing,
okay,
because it would be considered ordinary maintenance.
okay. Questions?
No, I just make the same caveat.
Yes.
That the replace, this would imply is much more of the same, but that be held through on this one again.
I think so too. Okay, as long as the restoration follows guidelines, could I hear a motion to approve this? Please?
Move that we we approve 2019-021, given the clear guidelines that are listed there by staff, that those are followed as carefully as possible.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor state aye, please.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you very much. Now, item 8 is to consider the COA for property located at 135 North Fredonia, COA number 2019-024.
Chairman, this for David and Sarah Ash at 135 North Fredonia Street is a sign request. There's two of them. I know on the the picture on your screen, it's kind of hard to see, but I'm sure you've all driven by this many times and noticed there is a horizontal sign there that you can kind of make it out. They are requesting to replace that with that sign that's on your screen there, along with the installation of this sign here, which the measurement's in your packet. It is 60 inches tall from the ground, with a sign face measuring 48 inches by 42 inches, and that is located there. You can see is sign A is the monument sign, and then sign B is the one that's on the facade of the building. I'm going to back up here, and I've been clicking back and forth, but you can see in that flower bed at the bottom of your screen is where the sign would go. The monument sign, and then the Nacogdoches abstract would be removed and the new sign go in its place. So Chairman, the contractor is here to answer any questions if you have any.
Okay, thank you. Would anyone like to question the contractor since he's here?
She-
I'd like to know about attachment.
Okay, thank you. Could you approach and state your name for the record, please?
My name is Melinda Monday.
Go ahead, Berkeley.
How, because this, it says each, I'm confused, because it's each letter, or is this a solid sign?
Those are for the building?
For the
They're
building, yeah.
fabricated steel letters attached
Okay.
to the brick with studs,
All right. and
just
so-
like the letters that are existing there right now.
Right, so how deep are these new letter studs gonna go?
Normally about 4 inches deep.
And they're going into the brick?
Yes, they will.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if they decide to change, we're gonna have a lot of holes? Is it one stud per letter or multiple
It's
studs?
probably gonna be about 3 per letter, just like the Nacogdoches abstract, what's up there now. In the history of doing these, the holes can be replaced. Usually, you just grind up some brick and put it on there to fill in the holes. Because that happens a lot. And these are very, very common signs. But yeah, they do put holes in the brick.
Okay. Anyone else? Thank you.
Okay.
All right, are there any other questions or discussions? Do I hear a motion?
Actually, I have a question. One thing.
Go ahead.
On their, yes, it is on their thing. Are we supposed to be dealing with the door lettering, painting? Does that fall under signage or no?
No, ma'am, it does not.
Okay. Just since it was listed. Sure.
We include all of those items as the applicant proposed them, but the two for your consideration are the building face, the one on your screen now, and then the monument sign.
And the one that's in the flower bed is just for placement only, not design or anything else like that, correct? Okay.
So this sign in front of you here could say, Bray's Antique Store. You're not looking at the message, it's simply the material and the placement.
Okay.
Well, as unfortunate as it seems to put holes in bricks, I'm not sure how to attach the sign without damaging the brick somehow.
Right. Well, especially the style of sign. Yeah.
True.
This is a 1980s construction.
Right. Okay.
It will be historic at some point.
Eventually.
Oh, maybe.
It's only 10 years away.
All right, do I hear a motion to approve the side guidelines of this COA?
I'll make a motion that we approve 2019-024 because the signs are, the one is flush mounted,
Right,
and at a lack of display windows, but at a suitable location next to the entrance. And the other, the monument sign is textbook.
right. Thank you. Do I hear a second? I'll second that. And all in favor, state aye, please.
Aye.
All right.
Chairman,
Yes.
who seconded that last motion?
I did.
Thank you.
So we are gonna talk about the proposed budget for 2019-2020 historic grant applications, historic restoration grant, excuse me. We had 13 applications this year. That's a lot more than normal. So we're very happy that so many people were interested in the grant program. And as you can see on your screen, that's sort of the spread of where they were all located, all the properties that are under consideration. And this is the proposed budget. So proposed only. We can make any changes that y'all want. It's based on the amount that we get from city council every year, which is $25,000. They approve it in our annual budget, and any leftover funds. So the reason we have leftover is because there are people that don't finish their grants, and so they forfeit their money. Some, like the one we approved at the beginning of this meeting, they come in under budget, so they have extra money left over, and so that happens over the course of all these grant applications. And so based on the minimum amount that we should have, that's where the numbers in front of you come from. So like I said, you can approve it as is. You can change some of the numbers, or you can have us go back and start from scratch with your recommendations. So as I said, we had a lot of applicants this year, and so that is where the numbers come from. We have a standard scoring matrix, if you will, and that's what we use to base the numbers on, and we will make changes as we need to, based on how much the project estimates are. So as you can see, the percentage is listed there, as well as the amount granted, and so if you have any questions about any of those numbers, I can answer that.
It is nice to see, of course, the percentages are a little lower when there are more applicants, but it is good to see more applicants because we know then that there's more improvements. Do we need to pull anything out and talk about it? Have you looked at all of these?
And another thing I'll mention is that the HLPC agreed long ago that if somebody applies, they should be granted money, and so we don't turn people away unless, of course, they're not actually eligible, which
Right.
everyone was and is.
But we don't have the matrix that was used to come up with the percentages.
No, but I can send that to you.
That is it's the same matrix that we've used for about the last 10 years. And I take the blame for that one. I did not include that in your packet. Sort of became commonplace, and I apologize for not including that.
Well, no, I meant specifically because these have already been through the matrix and come out the other side, and so it's hard to know,
So
as I'm looking at it, why one is 9 and one is 12.
So it's based on the score that they get, and that is all. It's not any opinion. So has the applicant gotten a grant in the last 5 years? Has the applicant ever gotten one before at all? Is the building currently vacant, and this would allow it to be open? Is it national? Is it individually listed on the National Register? Is it a Texas State landmark?
Is it a public building as opposed to a residence?
Exactly. So a lot of different criteria go into the scoring criteria, and and again, we can absolutely send all those to you.
Well, I'm familiar with it, but as I look
Yes.
at these, and as people are going to review these, if anybody was to review this, it would be good to know that indeed the scoring of it is a very standard thing. It's weighted according to the answers to questions that are observable and not subjective.
Right. And part of it is making it fit the budget, and so any changes that were made uniform across the board to make sure that we had enough money for all the applicants to get something.
It's unfortunate there's not more money to
It
give.
is. It is.
Absolutely.
And there is one project that is a very big project, and they had this highest score based on what we use. And so they got a lot of the money based on what they're doing, and it's a vacant building, so they scored higher, and they just happen to have the biggest project.
Are there any questions? And I think that if anyone wanted to question the criteria for the percentages, once they look at that criteria, it sort of is clear then. It's easy to understand.
I'd like to say, I'm happy to see some buildings on here that we've awarded in the past, and work is continuing, so I'm pleased.
Me too.
And
Yes.
just so that y'all are aware, this isn't the final step. It will go in front of City Council next because they make the ultimate decision. I'll present the budget as y'all approve it, and they will say yay or nay.
We can change it.
You have the power to change it.
Okay, do we need to discuss the fiscal year 2019-2020 anymore? Would someone like to make a motion to approve this historic restoration grant budget with the applications?
I move that we approve the 2020 HRG proposed budget as written, with the caveat that you do include the scoring matrix well, for the city council and then future
No.
applications.
Good idea. Thank you. Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor state aye, please. Aye. Thank you very much. All right. Now we're gonna discuss how we're gonna make all this money with this coloring book.
Yeah, I don't know how that's gonna happen.
I
I
love
do
it.
have lots of extra copies, in addition to what they got. Here's extra copies for audience, if anybody wants them, if anybody's too excited.
I know.
Do I need to come up front, or do I need to talk?
You can
from
present
here?
from right there.
Okay. So, several months ago, I don't know how long ago, it was a while ago, I was directed to see about putting together a coloring book similar to what Waxahachie has and other towns have. And so this is a sample preliminary draft. It's not complete, but it gives us something for you to go completely crazy, not on the right track, on the right track. The idea is to have an activity book for kids, whether it's used in the local schools or visitors. As good as our visitor center is, it is geared exclusively to adults. There's not much for kids there. And so the idea is looking at different activity books, word searches, little history of Nacogdoches, coloring, those types of things. So this is a first preliminary draft, and I welcome comments from everyone. I was going to say the peanut gallery, but everybody, staff, commission, as well as the public, on ideas of what types of things, as well as other buildings. These are just ones that I took pictures of, but I was certainly thinking perhaps all the city's historic sites should be featured, but if there were other ones that people wanted to add to the list, or other activities, so there is the brief presentation, more of a direction of where we're going.
I especially like the architectural styles and types that you included. And my, maybe it would be a good idea to have,
Plan is to have a glossary at the back.
or to have, something like, the Old Nacogdoches University here. you know, it's so atomist or whatever, you know, and have, some examples. in the
Yes,
color of
and that's the
yeah.
idea, is
Yeah.
we'll incorporate Greek revival with that, and so that if you're going through it, you'll learn about a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, might as well teach them something while they're having fun. I think this is a great idea.
Agreed.
I too think this is wonderful. I know in some of the word searches you have a variety of buildings. So my only comment is, and I know you will, but my comment publicly is that we make sure that we're as diverse in the offerings as Nacogdoches is, with 50% of the population not white. That we include structures and other important sites that are reflective of all our city's community. So I note things like Zion Hill Baptist Church.
Right.
But also, in regards to gender, whether it's maybe a picture of any prominent women, or the statue to Mrs.
Carl Wilson.
Carl Wilson. Things like that. Stuff I know you're obvious. I just want to make that publicly requested, or as a suggestion that we make sure we represent more.
On the list will remain so.
Well, I enjoyed the worksheet. I was just saying earlier, I couldn't wait to finish it. It was so, yes, I enjoyed it.
Well,
Now,
I
this
did the
does
word,
look
I
hard.
did the word scramble.
I have to say, this does look hard to color. Are these
I know,
just
he
Yes.
was difficult.
okay?
Simplify the drawing so that,
Well, Carl Wilson
actually,
Baker,
yes.
Carl Wilson Baker would be easier to color. Antonio Gillibarbo had all that foliage behind him, doesn't work
Yeah,
well.
it just kind
and
of
the depot
varies stuff.
closer up and, blown up and simplified, so, things like
Yeah,
that.
Old Stone Fort too, or something, or.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
for anything.
Yeah.
Surfing Steve.
But
Well,
has there
maybe
been any-
even,
Wonderful idea.
Has there been any thought to still recognize homes and structures that, while not so pretty, are still prevalent in Nacogdoches, like the shotgun houses that I might find over by, cemetery and things like that? I mean, that's still representative
Right.
of our community, and I don't want to
Some vernacular.
just have us be like, hey, here's our pretty stuff.
True.
possibly make one of this, like an addition of like an S in Spanish too, maybe? Because,
Actually, could this be made in
The
Spanish?
dual language.
dual language one?
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
would not
that'd
be
be good.
difficult, yeah.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's awesome. Everybody's a critic.
It's all right, I don't care. That's good, I want comments.
Let's get these nice and glossy and wonderful and sell them and put the money back into the, into the fund for restoration.
I think it's really cool that you have all the flags too, because I know I had to explain that to my father when they moved here, what each flag meant in the time period, because he was like, "What's the green one?" I was like, "I don't know." So, I don't know.
All right.
And Dr. Boswell, do we know who's going to print this?
Oh, no, we haven't gotten that far
Haven't got
yet.
that far yet, okay.
Maybe SFA?
That's what I thought.
Okay.
Cross that bridge when we get to it.
Okay, when we
Bingo.
get to it.
Did they give us a punch break?
All righty. Now we need to discuss condition of properties in Zion Hill Historic District.
Thank you, Chairman. You may have lots of questions for me or no questions, because I don't really have anything to present to you besides just to bring you up to speed in a very concise fashion. Not the history of the district, but the history of HLPC's dealing with the district is a better way of describing that. We are all very familiar with this area, Zion Hill Historic District. The Zion Hill Baptist Church is the cornerstone of the district. It incorporates everything from Lanana all the way down to Lanana Creek, and that's where you can see on your right side of the screen, the squiggly line is Lanana Creek. So those lots are very, very long. Not too long ago, none of these lots were actually divided. It was just one big property and houses were built on it. They were built around the turn of the century and nothing was subdivided. Since some of them have been sold, obviously you can't just sell an undefined piece of property, and so that's why you see some different shapes than others. For instance, some of those on the right that extend all the way to the creek, well, no one's going to build down there, so they just kept all that as one lot. HLPC and staff have had previous HLPCs, and start with that way, had lots of dealings with the owners, primarily one owner in the Zion Hill district. There have been two owners that we've dealt with, and it doesn't matter their names, but two owners we primarily dealt with, and we approached from a demolition by neglect perspective. Demolition by neglect is you, the property owner, are not allowed to neglect your building so that the only alternative is demolition. Oftentimes when I say demolition by neglect, people think, oh no, you're demolishing buildings. No, it's actually just the opposite of that. So one of the previous makeups of commissions, HLPC, approved boarding up and securing of the buildings, and it was focused on just Zion Hill. It did not extend to Virginia or to Washington Square. It was focused on just the Zion Hill district. And that was certain thickness of plywood, had to be painted, doors had to be secured, so it was fairly detailed as to how the exterior, the envelope, had to be treated, including the roof. The goal of that was so that the building didn't continue to deteriorate. And working with the primary property owner at the time, he was able to improve the condition of a lot of the houses. That was when most of them were blast painted. Some have since sold and individual property owners have painted them on their own. But if you can think about 10, 12 years ago, there was a big improvement in the district, and that's what I'm referencing. All of the buildings that were unoccupied, abandoned, were boarded up. Obviously, in the last 10 years, some of that has failed. Some of the plywood has fallen off. People have kicked in some of the doors. Trees have fallen on roofs and punctured holes, and so we're not back to where we were in 2007, 2010, but we're approaching that same status of the district. There's a group within city staff that have gotten together and have had discussions, how do we improve the Zion Hill district? Y'all are one piece of that, obviously a big piece, but there's also code enforcement and fire and sanitation and streets. I mean, it's the whole mix of city staff. Last time we did this, it was called Operation Clean Sweep. We're not doing it that same approach anymore, and as Dr. Beisel was shaking her head, that was absolutely why we no longer call it that or reference it that way. Because what we did was we came in and we changed all the street signs, and we improved patched holes in the road, and replaced any trash cans with missing lids, those kinds of things. But it wasn't a lasting. It kind of made it pretty for a short time, but didn't really do anything long term. Some of the items that have been requested in the past is, if you look, I don't really have a good way to point it out to you, but I never thought about this with the screens. I can't reference anything on like this area of it, but everything on the right-hand side of your screen, the ones with the long, you can see where the white lines stop. Those are paved roads.
Right.
Everything to your right of that is where I'm referring to. That is all in the floodway,
Yeah.
not floodplain, but floodway.
Do the roads continue, but they're not paved, or are there no roads?
They
Okay.
do not.
Thank you.
That's where they stop. So everything going north-south there on your map to connect one road to the other does not exist. Now, there's a cattle trail, a dirt path, whatever you want to call it, that people use, but there's not an official roadway going right there. I wasn't sure what the clicking was, sorry. You can't build down there.
Right.
You can't improve them. So we've been kind of in a quandary in the past because a property owner has requested to demolish them, and HLPC said no. And then he says, well, what do you want me to do with them? And they've said, well, we would approve. You can't approve, pre-approve, but we would approve if you wanted to move them up the hill and use them as infill. Property owner wasn't interested in doing that, and so there they sat and were boarded up. I suspect at some point in the next year, you'll probably be seeing some requests from property owners to do things with the building, such as, hey, I need to demolish them, there's nothing I can do with them. don't know for sure whether that will come to you or not, but it is difficult to say you can't do anything with it, but then inspection and code enforcement says, well, you can't improve it because it's in the floodway. So everything from that white line going up is some of it's in the flood plain. Flood plain is still, it's like a 500-year flood level. And so you can build there as long as you are 1 foot above the flood elevation. So if the flood elevation is right here, you have to go 12 inches above that, and then you can start building. So there's a way to get above that level.
And that's in the entire area, or where
That's-
specifically you said
that's
above the
just-
white line?
That's just in sort of the lower sections. The very bottom ones, the ones on the farthest right of your screen, can't do anything with those. They can't build them, they can't raise them, they can't improve them, because that's floodway.
Could they move them?
Yes.
I want one.
But previous HLPCs have made that very comment in that, if you move it outside the district, is the same thing as demolishing it, making it into pieces. And so they were encouraging the property owner at the time to move them and use them as infill. Because you can see there,
Yes,
especially
there've been
along
several torn
Ola,
down.
there are a lot of blank spaces.
Yeah, and Richardson.
Right.
Yeah, Ola and Richardson, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, Ola, Jean, and Ernest, going top to bottom. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have about the district. Once again, this was not anything I was presenting saying, do you approve or do you encourage? Just wanted to kind of bring you up to
They couldn't be
speed.
moved even like, say, if one was moved to Millard's Crossing, even, and,
That is for you to decide, because a moving of the property is the same thing as a demolition.
I understand that.
And so it's a demolition request. If you have a request to move it from point A to point B and it's still within that district, that's a much higher chance of approval, because what makes the district unique is the architecture.
Right,
So if you were to take one of these and put them on Washington Square, it wouldn't fit.
no.
You probably wouldn't approve someone to build brand new a home that looks like this on Virginia Avenue, because it's a different style of architecture. That's a different way of looking at it. But yes, they are neat, and I'd love to have one as well.
Me too. Okay. It would be nice to have one at Millard's, though. I mean, just as an example. But anyway.
So there are some of them that are,
Is
you
the
can see where,
owner local?
yes, ma'am.
He is.
Yes, ma'am. You can see where the roadway ends. These are a couple of them that are, it's kind of hard to see, but the end of Ola, there's 4 houses right there, 2 directly. That's those 2, and then the red one there is the one that's just off to the side on your map.
Is the owner, does he own any of the vacant lots where houses have been torn down? And if so,
I
I
don't know
wonder
for
if he would allow for one of those to be moved onto his property. I don't know, I'm grasping at straws here.
You can see these are, these are still secured the way we requested that they were last time we did a big enforcement.
This feels very much like when the flood down at what is now Festival Park, and I went and took photographs of houses that were torn down, and a couple were moved, because of the flood, out in the country, but it was just sort of, it was
This
just
is
the
the-
death,
this
watching
is the
those
middle
houses
road
get
on your
torn
map.
down.
This one's Jean Alley is what the steep hill you're seeing. And most of these down towards the lower section, the easternmost, are unoccupied. They're abandoned, no utilities,
I
no
was
electric
wondering
water.
what was happening to that, because they're just sitting there.
So the ones along, and I'm going backwards again. The ones along Ernest, most of those are occupied. In fact, almost all of those down Ernest are occupied, except for the one at the very bottom. And the owner of that one owns the property right next to it. And she has come before y'all several times in the
Yes,
last 2
right.
years and requested permission to do a number of things with both of those properties. And so that's not one I'm as concerned about, because there's an owner who's interested in working on it.
Mm-hmm.
It's really the other ones going north on your map from there. And you can see where Zion Hill Church is located. It's the only non-square rectangle on the map.
So what is our role in this?
Yeah.
Just bringing you up to speed a little bit on where we were, so that, because I suspect within the next several months, you will see some requests come before you regarding Zion Hill District. So I just wanted to, that way you have a chance to drive through there. You've kind of seen where we've been, what we've done. Like I said, there've been several requests for demolition and they've been denied, and counseled the owner, hey, if you want to move them, great. That doesn't mean you have to make that same decision, but that's what previous commissions have done.
Can you send us this, so we'll have this for reference between now and
Yes.
Yes.
just a PDF?
The map.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Chairman, I'd be happy to answer any other questions.
I don't know, this is frustrating. No, does anyone else have any questions, or?
I appreciate staff bringing us up to date or
Yes.
Up to
back up
speed,
to
yeah.
context, I
Yeah.
guess, whatever it may be.
And the strong wind never came through town like this, that some of these houses would not stand.
No, you're probably right. Okay, well, I guess we are adjourned. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.